Welcome to Il Salotto Sessions, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of design with leading architects, designers, and industry experts. I'm your host, Sara Seravalli, and I'm thrilled to take you on this journey through the ever-evolving landscape of design and architecture. Let me share a bit about my background. I spent 16 enriching years in Milan, the capital of design, where I was deeply involved in showrooms and events not just in Milan, but also in Paris and London. In 2011, I made a pivotal move to London when I was hired by one of the specification market's main players to establish the new showroom in Clerkenwell. In 2013, my journey brought me to Scotland, where I founded Design Pop-Up. This initiative quickly gained traction and became a cornerstone in Glasgow and Manchester's design communities, and by 2018 we also expanded to Dublin. However, as the market evolved, I decided to refocus our efforts on Scotland. This led to the birth of Il Salotto, a new venture aimed at creating a virtual and physical space for meaningful conversations and insights into the specification market. Join us as we explore trends, share bios, and uncover the stories behind the creative minds shaping our world. Welcome to today's episode. We are excited to bring you an insightful conversation with Michael Gallacher, Construction Director at Abstract Group and Mental Health Representative at BCO Scotland. In this episode, Michael shares his journey through the construction industry, highlighting the beautiful and ambitious projects he's managed throughout his remarkable career. We also dive deep into the crucial topic of mental health in the building industry, an issue close to Michael's heart. He shares his experience advocating for mental well-being in a field often known for its tough environment. Plus, we discuss how to empower future generations to thrive in this dynamic industry. Whether you are in construction or just curious about the challenges and rewards of the field, this episode is packed with valuable insights. Hello there, and welcome to this new episode of Il Salotto Sessions. Today, I'm here with Michael Gallacher of Abstract Group, Construction Director of Abstract Group, to be more precise. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad.
I've invited you to join us because I wanted to continue with you the chat we started on mental health and well-being at the event in Glasgow last March. You are the mental health rep for the BCO in Scotland, but also you were part of a very interesting panel discussion that we had in Glasgow Pop-Up a few years back, organized by the interior design team of Shepard Robson, and it was about neurodiversity. So obviously, it's a topic that is very close to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. The neurodiversity topic is something I was acutely aware of, particularly because my son happens to have autism and has a condition called Joubert syndrome. So I'm very aware of how that affects him and how other things affect him as he's been growing up. Everyone's different, everyone's unique, and it's, I suppose, taking cognizance of that on every level, particularly in relation to design, and being aware that the built environment has a huge impact on our sensory awareness.
So with your role in the BCO, is there any particular actions that are you just somebody that you're there available if somebody needs a chat, or is there anything else you're doing, organizing?
Well, I mean, we're obviously not experts when it comes to mental health. It's a cause that's close, I think, particularly in Scotland to everyone's heart, given recent history. And what we were really trying to do, I think, is just create awareness. I think with COVID and lockdown, everyone's become far more aware of their own mental health, but also the impacts that mental health can have. We were all focused on the couch to 5K and thinking about our physical health, but perhaps ignoring the fact that a bit of exercise and change of environment can have a huge impact on your mental health as well. So really, from a BCO perspective, all we are trying to do is create as much awareness as possible and be available to people if they want to talk, but ultimately also point them in the right direction of help that they can get access to.
Yeah, very good. So you are one of my favorite people in the industry, and because it's a bit like the chat I was having with Gillian here on the podcast a few weeks ago. So you, Gillian, and Peter, I think there is a reason why you're all at the BCO together, because you're all incredibly positive. That is very obvious. You are very solid professionals, and there is no messing you guys about. That if you want something done, it gets done no matter what. But you do that with such kindness and positivity that is quite inspiring. You know, you, Peter, and Gillian, you're all leaders that are there for your staff, but then at the same time, things get done.
That's very kind of you to say. I'm not sure all of my consultants would necessarily agree with that, but yeah, you look. I mean, Peter and Gillian, I've worked with for a long time. In fact, Peter, I think, was probably one of the first engineers I worked with when I started my career, and then Gillian, obviously, I met as the years moved on. Both are great professionals. Both are excellent to work with on the BCO, and I completely agree. I think their enthusiasm is quite contagious. But with that, you know, they've got an incredible work ethic, which also allows them to set very high standards for other people because they set such high standards for themselves. So it's quite an easy sort of group to knit in with and work with because, you know, everyone's equally committed.
Yeah, and get inspired by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as you say, they've got very strong. You guys have got very strong work ethic, and therefore they inspire you to get the best, to be the best you can in your job.
Yeah, and absolutely challenge one another. You know, no one's shy in coming forward with their opinions and equally disagreeing in a constructive way. You know, so I think that's entirely healthy and correct, particularly in a sort of multidisciplinary environment where you've got people with specific expertise in their field, you know, listening to those expertise and then obviously bouncing off of them and hopefully coming up with some good ideas.
So you are still very young, although you've been around for a while. Well, at least you're younger than me, but you've been around for a while.
Don't feel that
we had a lot of, we had some conversations with Gillian, and then I was on recording with Nicole Kearney the other day. And so we were discussing about challenges for the girls, the women in the building industry, which, you know, some are more obvious than others. But do you think, is there anything specific for actually men or young men or older men?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's necessarily split in terms of gender. I think that there are absolute challenges, particularly for young people in the industry now, which I certainly didn't have to face when I started. And I think it's very easy to become isolated. So, you know, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. I was at the airport and I seen everybody on their mobile phone, as you'd expect. And I started thinking about technology and how it influences building, and not in the context of neurodiversity, because it was actually one of the subjects I was down to discuss when I was in London yesterday. And it occurred to me that, you know, we were promised with technology in the sort of last 20 years that we were going to become far more connected and it's going to make everything easier, boost communication. But I couldn't help but feel that actually what it's done is it's created a distraction rather than creating communication. And in a way, it has sort of isolated people to an extent because there's this illusion that you are connected because you have this device in your hand. When in actual fact, it's not real communication. It's not real engagement. I think it can make our lives dramatically easier, of course, and I'm on the phone all the time, but I don't think it's a substitute for meeting people. And that's, I think, a real challenge for people from a mental health perspective, but also people that are new into the industry. You know, if they're working from home or they are not engaging with their colleagues, and I don't mean just their line manager, I mean colleagues they won't necessarily work with on a day-to-day basis. They're not getting the sort of subliminal almost, or subconscious rather, advice that you would get. You know, you would never create a Teams call to ask someone the daft question, which I continuously asked, what I started probably still ask actually. You just wouldn't do that. And I think that's a real concern for businesses and people.
Yeah, I thought when we were in lockdown, I only imagine how hard it would have been to start a new job. And you're working from home. How do you do the training? How do you build up a team? How do you as you say, get advice for silly things that you just started a new job. So is everybody's got needs questions that are for you being around for a long time. For you is obvious, but if you got a new member of staff joining in, they still need to ask you, sorry, where's the toilet or stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I was really fortunate with the people that I worked with when I started my career, and I get really great advice and great support. But equally, there would be things that I would see colleagues and they would make a mistake. If there's something massive, and I would think at the time, "Wow, glad that wasn't me. I'm not going to make that mistake." Um, and those sort of things would never happen if you're working remotely and not in a team. And also, they wouldn't be discussed. No one's going to come on a Teams call and say, "Oh, by the way, I answered the phone and thought it was an internal colleague, and swore at them, and turns out it was a client or something." That sort of daft sort of scenario.
Right. Listen, talking about technology, have you ever come across the app website called Crystal Nose?
No, it's not.
Right. So it's artificial intelligence. So
Uh-huh.
this website, basically, you can add a little thing on your LinkedIn, and then when you I was researching you the other day, say,
Right.
well, I know you a little bit, but I don't know you that well. So just trying to see where to take this conversation to. So I went on my LinkedIn, got your profile out, and then there is this little button comes out, Crystal Knows, get a profile of Michael. So it would tell you. So this is used on a sales, in a sales way, as in it would teach me how to get an email to you. What you're interested into, what is get you involved, what it actually gets you put off, and things like that.
Sure.
But before I done that on myself, and it's actually quite scary.
Oh, really? And is it accurate?
It's incredibly accurate. So
Wow.
if I look at my profile, I would say I would agree with everything he says, but things like I hate being micromanaged,
Oh, really?
or so I've done that for you, and it would say when you write an email to Michael, go straight to the point. Don't faff about like British people do. Good morning, how are you? I hope your family is well. No, with Michael, you should say, Michael, are you available on Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock? That's it.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if that's just a personal trait that I have, or if it's maybe a result of working at Abstract for Mark Gladman. He's absolutely a very direct person, which makes life actually a lot easier. There's no skirting around the edges. It's just quite direct, and I quite like that.
So how has it been working in Abstract for several years now? Because you started in 2013 and got
Yeah.
promoted in 2018.
It's been absolutely brilliant. It was a big step at the time, but it wasn't one I was reluctant to take or concerned about taking. It was a stage in my career where I was looking to make a change anyway, and I was in the process of doing that when Mark approached me and asked me to join Abstract, and I've never looked back, to be honest.
You work in some very incredible projects. What gets you driven in the morning? Why are you getting out of bed in the morning?
Um, well, multitude of reasons, really. I mean, I know how fortunate I am in the sense that I like my work, and actually, I always have. Even before I was at Abstract, I enjoyed my job. I think because I was continuously, always learning when I started it, and then I continue to learn now. At the moment, I think I'm just really interested in what we're doing. I I enjoy it. Maybe it sounds a bit sad. I don't know. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the people I work with. I particularly enjoy all of the members of the teams that we work with, which is probably quite rare. I think it's easy to work with people and respect them, but I don't think it necessarily means that you'll like one another and get on. But I think that is actually the case for our guys at the moment.
Yeah, you're very lucky.
Yeah. So
So talking about people
maybe
you
that's
work
one
with.
way. Maybe that's a one way thing. Maybe it's only me that likes them.
No, I'm sure everybody loves you, Michael. Come on. Right. So, talking about these people you work with. So, you liaise with clients, you produce specifications, you work up designs proposal, but you also monitor the performance of the contractors, the professional team, and then you got legal and quantity surveyor background. So, you do everything.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a bit of a jack of all trades in a way in terms of from the development side. You know, from when we identify sites, carrying out feasibility in terms of whether they'll work for us, pulling together the numbers to insert them into an appraisal, and then hopefully, if that works, go through the acquisition of the site, get the team appointed, pull together the design, planning, get it built, engage with the tenants, hopefully, in terms of delivery of their fit out, etc. And then any disposal and dealing also with inquiries when it comes to disposal, actually. So the other side of the due diligence.
So what's your favorite phase?
When it's all finished, probably.
It's off your desk.
Yeah, no, I think it's always quite satisfying when we get on site, actually, because there's a lot of work, and I think to some people it seems there's not a lot of tangibles in terms of what you've done, but planning processes can be very painful for everyone involved. So when you actually get the consent and start work, it feels very real at that point. So I think that's probably the most satisfying. But that's also quite a challenging stage as well.
And where do you see the building industry going in Scotland?
Well, I think the industry, I think it's got a habit of doing itself down, actually, and being quite self-critical. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's a Scottish thing. I'm not sure, but I think that there is absolutely positive elements to it. That we keep talking about refurbing things, and I think that will continue. I think refurb's excellent. I just think that we need to almost take a bit more of a step back before we can go forward to assess the appropriate nature, rather than creating refurb for refurb's sake. My concern is that we're refurbishing buildings that will last another 15 years, rather than actually making serious change that will, perhaps utilize the whole life cycle of a building's material. So if we're designing buildings now that's got a frame that lasts 60 years, well, let's make sure that frame's used for 60 years. I'm not convinced that a lot of the refurbs aren't just a kind of bit of a square peg in a round hole scenario, trying to force it, and it's maybe not appropriate, and thinking far more long term rather than a sort of short term refurbishment approach.
Do you do everything brand new, or do you do retrofit as well?
No, we do retrofit as well, although the nature of what we've been doing doesn't particularly lend itself to it. We've been doing a lot of life science buildings at the moment, and in the particular region that we're doing it, there is just not enough space at all, and also suitable space. And I think we've probably reached a point where technology is driving a lot of the actual processes, and the buildings need to be able to accommodate that. And if they've been built, 40 years ago, that's not necessarily the case, particularly with things like plant and how that's changed for air handling units and extraction and things.
I like retrofitting. It's my favorite side of architecture.
And it always looks great. It's always exciting and it's clever. And it's absolutely appropriate that that's the direction we're going in. I just think it needs to be far more longer term rather than just on the surface making changes.
Yeah, so we had we recorded a podcast with Tom Barclay and Donna Milton on social housing that's going to be released next week. And one of the things we were discussing is, as a judge of the Era Property Award, I get to see a lot of social housing.
Yeah.
I find it very interesting how some councils are working so well in creating a product, a house that has got a 60, 80 years life expectancy, while a lot of private developers, they just look at the immediate gain, and therefore some of those houses, they're derelict after 5 years. So I totally get what you see, and we should put more effort in building something that lasts longer and not just refurbish something that doesn't really need refurbished.
Yeah, absolutely. I think housing's a really interesting one. I think, there should be a greater focus, I think, on acknowledging the fact that we've got huge homelessness in the UK, which is absolutely absurd to be in the the economy that we're in and the part of the world that we're in and still have this huge issue. And I accept that there's huge social issues associated with it. But the fact is, homelessness will get worse if housing does not become accessible, both in terms of social housing and affordable housing. And if we go back to around about 2007 when there was the crash, at that point there was a deficit of housing. We've gone backwards since then in terms of house building, and I think that there's a huge reliance on the private sector to solve these problems. Just the house builders who are absolutely specialists in their field. But we need to take a more holistic town planning approach, I think, from a government sense, and try and enable cities to become more livable. Not just for young professionals, but actually for young families who would want to stay there, and actually look to other countries or other cities that have been very successful with this, like Copenhagen, Amsterdam. I'm not suggesting that I expect people to be all cycling with their kids at the back of their bike up Bath Street. It's a bit of a gradient, but there should be schools in the city. There should be a bigger mix rather than let's create a new town on the suburbs and hope that it works.
Yeah, I am well, to be polite, I'm not a fan of these big developments that, well, I'm based in Renfrewshire, so I know what happened in Renfrewshire, but like the Dargavel village in Bishopton for me is just the most horrendous place you can build, because there's a ridiculous amount of houses, but there is no shops. It's not a village. It's just a ghetto. You just go there for sleeping.
Yeah, and look, when I was at school, we used to study the new towns that were developed. Places like in Easterhouse, Drumchapel to an extent. And the issue was always like, we've got a huge, terrible housing block in the city, moving people out into the suburbs. And when these were built, it was a great idea, but there was zero facilities, there lacked, there was a huge lack of amenities in terms of recreation, but equally access to shops and things, and it's not a great, it creates a lot of isolation and yeah, all you're doing is forcing people to go back into the city you've taken them out of.
Create a village rather than just create a dormitory.
Yeah,
Ghetto.
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
Yeah.
digressing a little bit, but that's all very interesting. So to wrap this up, Michael, if there is one big piece of advice you would say to a young person, female, male, we don't care, we are all about equal opportunities, what would you tell them if they want to get into the building industry, your big piece of advice?
I think if someone wants to get into the building industry, then they should be positive about it. I think they should try and learn from as many different people as possible, and also go out and meet people. Make connections. There's absolutely no substitute for sitting down with someone and getting to know them a bit before you engage with them, because I think it helps build trust. And ultimately, there has to be trust when you're working closely with people. And I think look, there's no substitute for hard work. It's a fundamental fact. As much as we might want to ignore it and say, it's just a job, that's fine. But actually, the more you put in at the beginning, the more you'll get out earlier, I think. And I don't mean out as in a way, I mean get out of it.
But for two people like us that are incredibly passionate about what we do, it makes it even more fun to work. I mean, yeah, sometimes there's a lot of things you don't want to be doing, but it's more fun if you're passionate about what you do.
Absolutely. But you're right, though. Look, you need to get out your jammies and get to your work. That's a fact. No matter who you are, that's what you need to do. But I think you should look at it less as a all work is hard. Try and enjoy the journey, and it becomes less difficult, I think, or less arduous. Doesn't mean it won't have its challenges, but ultimately no one can do it for you. And an appetite to learn and ask questions is imperative if you're going to grow.
Right. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that, Michael.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much for asking me on. It was interesting. It's good fun.
Thank you very much for listening to Il Salotto Sessions. If you enjoyed the chat, please make sure you share with your friends and follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. For more information on our events, please visit ilsalotto.design and designpopup.com. You can also find us on Instagram _designpopup and Il Salotto Glasgow, as well as LinkedIn. Should you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions, please do get in touch. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.